A NATO official said the North Atlantic Defense Organization was preparing for the biggest overhaul of military planning since the Cold War in case Moscow dared escalate the conflict. While they're not 11 feet tall, they're not 2 feet short either, said NATO Military Committee Chair Admiral Rob Bauer. So we must not underestimate Russia and their ability to bounce back. U.S. President Joe Biden and his NATO counterparts are scheduled to approve a major overhaul of the alliance planning system at a summit in the Lithuanian capital, Vilnius, next week. As an organization, NATO does not provide weapons or ammunition to Ukraine. NATO is trying to avoid getting involved in a wider war with nuclear-armed Russia. Nevertheless, NATO is strengthening the security of its member states near Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. About 40,000 troops stand guard from Estonia in the north to Romania on the Black Sea. About 100 NATO aircraft fly daily in the region, and a total of 27 warships operate in the Baltic and Mediterranean seas. These numbers will increase. Under their new plan, NATO aims to have up to 300,000 troops ready to move to the eastern border within 30 days. The plan divides its territory into 3 zones: the Northern European region and the Atlantic region, a zone north of the Alps, and another zone in Southern Europe. Bauer said NATO's new plans were based on the strength of the Russian army before President Vladimir Putin launched the war in Ukraine nearly 17 months ago. He said the war weakened the Russian army, but not its Navy or Air Force. Of the Russian ground forces, about 94% are now engaged in the war in Ukraine, said Bauer. In general, what we're seeing is Russia being cautious of NATO. They're not looking for conflict with NATO. I think that's a sign that they're very busy, he said. On land, I don't think they have much power available to do things to other people. But we are confident that Russia will rebuild its military, he said. We will continue to view them as a serious threat, especially in the maritime and airspace, and in space, they are still very capable, not to mention, of course, in the nuclear field. An uprising by Wagner mercenaries in Russia last month raised deep security concerns in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland after an agreement was reached for their leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, to be allowed to seek asylum in Belarus. Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda said neighboring countries would face increased danger if the Wagner group deployed their serial killer just across the border. Vilnius is located about 35 kilometers from the Belarusian border. Lithuania wants to have a permanent NATO presence on its territory. Germany signaled last week that it would be willing to station troops there if asked. However, NATO currently sees no immediate threat from Belarus. We believe we know what's going on, and at the moment, we're not seeing any changes. But that doesn't distract us from what we have to do every day. Major General Matthew Van Wagenen told reporters. If we need to change position, we can do it quickly. NATO's 31 member states held a troop strength building conference last week in an effort to understand how much troops and equipment NATO can mobilize to respond to a Russian attack, both in the short and long term. The 2 officers were optimistic about the outcome, although they declined to provide details for security reasons. However, experts and some NATO diplomats doubt the readiness of member countries to prepare a total of 300,000 troops. I would classify it as very successful, said Van Wagenen. I can guarantee you, we are in a position that now we know what was missing and how we need to build on it in the future. In terms of NATO's ability to implement the plan if needed in the future, Bauer welcomed the expected commitment in Vilnius by Biden and his colleagues to increase defense spending, which will help provide the necessary equipment to generals on the ground. In 2014, NATO committed to a military budget of 2% of GDP by 2024. At a July 11 to 12 summit, leaders will set the 2% figure as a spending cap, not as a target to be achieved.